Welcome to Sleepy Cosmic. As your day begins to soften at the edges and your thoughts start loosening their grip, I invite you into a different kind of night. Not the one outside your window with its familiar silver moon and pinpricked stars, but a deeper night, a more distant silence. Imagine for a moment that the universe itself had grown cold. Not just winter in your city or frost on your window, but the kind of cold that seeps into galaxies, into atoms, into the very heart of existence. Picture the stars around you dimming one by one, their light fading as if some cosmic hand has drawn a heavy curtain across the sky. What would it mean if the entire cosmos froze? What would it feel like to float inside a universe that no longer burns, no longer stirs, no longer sings? Perhaps you've known the hush of a snowy morning, when the world feels muffled and sound seems to move more slowly. That feeling of walking outside, breath visible in the air, the street strangely still, as though life has paused. The frozen universe would be something like that, but infinitely magnified. No birds, no footsteps, no movement at all, lonely the grand silence of stars that once flared with heat, now turned into quiet, crystalline relics. As you breathe in this image, notice how your mind slows to sough, how the pace of your inner world begins to mirror the pace of this imagined cosmos. A frozen universe does not rush. It waits, it lingers, and it pulls you into its stillness. But here's the strange thing. To imagine everything frozen is to confront the question of motion itself. If nothing moved, if even the smallest vibration of an atom ceased, would time still pass? On Earth, we measure time by change, by clocks ticking, by sunrises and sunsets, by heartbeats. In a frozen cosmos, what would there be to mark the moments? Would you find yourself floating in eternity, a traveler outside the reach of clocks? Or would time itself stop, leaving you suspended in a single, endless breath? These questions tug at you, not just as curiosities of physics, but as invitations to feel differently about your own life. You, too, have moments that feel frozen, days when nothing seems to move forward, nights that stretch endlessly. How often have you wondered if those moments are wasted, or if they are in fact the closest thing to eternity you will ever touch? Drifting through a frozen universe, you might feel both awe and unease. Because the beauty of still galaxies would be undeniable, spiral arms caught mid-sweep like frozen fireworks, planets shimmering like ice-sculpted jewels. Unease, because without movement, without warmth, you'd wonder whether meaning itself could survive. And yet, isn't there also something comforting in imagining that nothing can be lost, that in the freeze, everything remains perfectly preserved? The last flicker of a star never quite gone, the last whisper of a galaxy never fully erased. In such a universe, change, the very thing that often frightens us, has been suspended. You would never have to say goodbye again. Still, as you picture yourself floating there, you might ask, who would you be without motion, without growth, without change? Identity, after all, is forged in movement, through choices, through challenges, through transformations. Without those, would you remain yourself, or would you become something else entirely, something timeless, unbound by past or future? Perhaps part of you longs for such release, while another part trembles at the thought of losing even the pain that makes you real. Contrast is what gives life color, warmth after cold, sound after silence, joy after longing. A frozen universe strips away contrast. Could you endure its beauty without its shadows? And yet, floating there, wrapped in infinite cold, you may discover a hidden truth. Stillness itself can be transformative. Think of the moments in your own life when you've paused, sitting by a quiet lake, lying under the stars, closing your eyes after a long day. In those pauses, something shifts. You realize that your worth is not only in what you do or achieve, but in simply existing, in simply being present. The frozen cosmos whispers the same lesson, that even without motion, even without fire, being itself has value. And in that realization, you might find peace rather than fear. So, as you let yourself sink into this idea of a frozen universe, notice how it reshapes the way you feel about your own time. What if not every moment has to burn brightly? What if not every day has to be full of noise and movement? Maybe the still, quiet, frozen spaces in your life are not empty at all, but alive with meaning, just waiting for you to notice them. The frozen universe becomes less a nightmare and more a mirror, reflecting back to you the possibility of rest, of preservation, of quiet beauty. And this is just the beginning of our journey. Tonight, we will wander together into the physics, the philosophy, and the imagination of what it would mean if the cosmos truly froze. But for now, let this first image stay with you. The stars dimming, the galaxies held in suspension, and you alone, but not lonely, drifting gently through a universe turned to ice. In the silence, you are invited not just to wonder, but to rest. You're still drifting, carried by the hush of that frozen cosmos. And yet, a quiet question rises. What does it truly mean for the universe to freeze? It's not just a poetic image, not only a dreamlike metaphor. To understand it, we first have to talk about temperature itself. Not the temperature you see glowing on your phone's weather app, not the chill that makes you pull a blanket closer, but the kind of temperature that exists in the void between galaxies, where no wind blows and no sunlight warms. Out there, in the truest dark, the universe already hums at a staggering cold, just a few degrees above absolute zero, the lowest temperature possible. Imagine that the grand expanse you see twinkling with stars is actually steeped in an almost perfect chill. A background frost left over from the birth of everything. Absolute zero. Even the words carry a strange weight. It is the point at which all motion stops, when atoms cease their restless vibration, when energy itself seems to give up. But here's the strange twist: absolute zero is not a place you can ever quite reach. It's an ideal, a boundary, something the laws of physics allow us to describe, but never to fully touch. The cosmos plays this eternal game of approach, slipping closer and closer to stillness, but never landing on it. Like a candle burning down, but never fully extinguishing, the universe is always cooling, but never done. Doesn't that mirror something in your own life? Those moments when you think you've reached the end of a feeling, only to find it still lingers, softer but not gone. In physics, as in living, endings are rarely absolute. Right now, the universe is cold, yes, but it is not yet frozen. Stars still burn, galaxies still swirl, atoms still buzz with motion. Every sunrise you've ever known is proof of that warmth still alive. But scientists tell us that, given enough time, this heat will leak away. Stars will exhaust their fuel, galaxies will dim, and the cosmos will sink further into shadow. It is called the heat death of the universe, though paradoxically it describes a state of infinite cold. Imagine walking into a room and feeling not just the absence of warmth, but the absence of any possibility of warmth returning. That's the trajectory of everything's low cooling, endless expansion, and finally, the deep freeze. Think about contrast for a moment. You notice warmth most on a winter day, when your hands ache until they find a fire. You notice silence only after noise has stopped. The universe, too, tells its story in contrasts. Once, it was unimaginably hot, a fiery newborn. Now, billions of years later, it has stretched into near silence, near stillness. To picture its frozen end is to confront the very shape of time itself. Beginnings that blaze, middles that evolve, and endings that soften into silence. Doesn't your own life follow this rhythm? Bursts of energy in youth, a long middle stretch of movement, and eventually a settling into something quieter, slower. The science of cosmic temperature is not distant from you. It is etched into the very patterns of being human. And yet, here's the curiosity. While we think of freezing as death, in another sense, it is also preservation. Ice keeps what it holds. A frozen flower still carries the outline of its petals. A frozen river still remembers its flow beneath. If the universe drifts toward cold, perhaps it also drifts toward memory, toward holding on rather than letting go. Imagine every laugh, every song, every touch preserved in that cosmic frost. What if the freeze is not an erasure, but a pause? What if it is not the end, but a silence before something else? This is where science and imagination begin to blur, where numbers dissolve into questions that feel achingly human. Because at the heart of this idea is not just physics, it is identity. If everything cooled to stillness, if all the fire and brightness faded, what role would you play in that story? Would you cling to the memory of warmth, carrying it like a secret ember inside you? Or would you let the silence seep in, reshaping you into someone new, someone at peace with endless night? This is the psychology of cosmic temperature. It is not only about stars and atoms, but about the way you define yourself in relation to endings, to stillness, to silence. Some people fear it, others find comfort. Where do you feel yourself leaning? So, as you continue floating in this thought, let the science settle into you, not as cold fact, but as living metaphor. The universe is cooling, yes. It always has been, always will. But in that truth is an invitation to notice your own warmth while you have it. To notice the fire in your life, now the conversations that glow, the love that flickers, the creativity that burns. Because one day, in your own way, your story too will move towards silence. But tonight, you are here, alive, in the warmth of this moment, free to imagine a cosmos that whispers its future into your dreams. You are still floating through the quiet. And the first question that rises is simple, yet impossible to ignore. How cold is the universe, really? Not the cold you feel when you step outside in January, not even the kind that stings your skin on a mountain peak, but a cold so deep and ancient that it almost defies imagination. Scientists call it the cosmic microwave backgrounder, faint afterglow left from the Big Bang, stretched thinner and thinner as the universe has expanded. That glow now hums at just a few degrees above absolute zero, the lowest temperature possible. Imagine holding a thermometer up to the fabric of reality itself, and finding it barely alive with heat like the last ember at the bottom of a dying fire. Absolute zero. The phrase itself feels final, like a door that closes and never opens again. It represents the point at which motion stops, when even the tiniest vibration of atoms ceases. But here is the twist. Absolute zero is not a place the universe can ever truly reach. Physics keeps it just out of reach, a boundary you can approach but never cross. Doesn't that sound strangely familiar? How often in your own life have you tried to reach something perfect stillness, perfect closure, perfect certainty, only to find it slipping away the closer you get? Like chasing the horizon, the closer you walk, the further it seems to recede. The universe, too, plays this endless game, and yet, think about how powerful it is that the cosmos is already so close to that edge. Right now, between the galaxies, space itself rests at around 2.7 Kelvin. To put that into perspective, water freezes at 273 Kelvin. The difference is staggering. Like comparing the heat of a blazing campfire to the faint smoke that drifts upward after it has gone out. If you've ever sat by a fire as it dwindled, watching the glow sink into ash, you already know what the universe feels like on its grandest scale. We are living in the embers of creation, wrapped not in the crackling blaze of its beginning, but in the faint, cold echo of its past. But here is where curiosity pushes us further. If the universe is already so close to absolute zero, could it ever get there completely? Could everything truly freeze? Every particle locked in perfect stillness? The laws of thermodynamics whisper no, and yet the mind cannot help but wander. Imagine a cosmos that has cooled for trillions upon trillions of years, where stars have gone dark, galaxies have dimmed, and even black holes have evaporated into silence. Would that final breath of heat slip away, leaving behind an eternity of absolute zero? Or would the laws of nature, stubborn and unyielding, keep just the faintest whisper of warmth alive forever? This is more than science. It is philosophy written in numbers. If there is always a flicker of warmth, no matter how faint, then the story of the universe never ends. It becomes an eternal ember, never fully extinguished. But if the freeze is absolute, then there comes a moment where not only motion, but time itself stops. Because time, in many ways, is nothing more than change. Without motion, without vibration, without the tiniest shiver of an atom, what would remain to mark a second, an hour, a millennium? You begin to see how physics collides with identity here. Because to imagine time stopping is also to imagine yourself suspended, no longer pulled forward, no longer aging, no longer becoming. Who would you be if you were simply still? This is where relatability matters. Think about winter mornings, when you step outside and the air bites sharply, when the world seems slowed, quieter, held in suspension. There is a beauty to that stillness, but also a challenge. Part of you longs for the warmth to return, for the sun to rise higher, for life to quicken. And part of you, perhaps secretly, cherishes the hush, the peace, the way the cold makes every sound seem sharper, every breath more noticeable. The universe is giving us that same mirror, showing us both sides of stillness, the loss of fire, but also the clarity of silence. If the cosmic fire is fading, then what does that mean for you? It means your moments of warmth, your laughter, your connections, your passions, not trivial. They are the rarest things in existence. Against the backdrop of a freezing cosmos, the heat of your life is extraordinary. Think of your friendships as galaxies still burning, your dreams as stars flaring in the night, your love as fire holding out against infinite cold. When you see the universe cooling, you begin to recognize the urgency of your own warmth, not in a rushed, panicked way, but in a gentle invitation to savor the heat you hold, to cherish it because it is rare. So tonight, as you picture yourself gliding through this frozen expanse, remember that science is not cold at all. It is full of poetry if you listen closely. The numbers tell us that the universe hums just above nothingness, that its light is fading, that it is cooling endlessly. But your imagination turns those facts into feelings, and your feelings transform them into meaning. The cosmos reminds you everything cools, but while it burns, it matters. You matter. And in the vast quiet of a universe slipping toward stillness, that realization may be the warmest truth of all. Imagine drifting closer to a star that once blazed with light, but now lies silent, a husk of what it used to be. It is no longer the fiery beacon that guided planets, warmed worlds, and perhaps even nurtured life. Instead, it is cold, dark, and motionless, a frozen star. The phrase feels contradictory, doesn't it? Stars are supposed to burn, to radiate, to roar across the night sky. Yet physics tells us that even these titans are not eternal. One by one, their fuel runs out, their cores collapse or fade, and in the distant future, they will become nothing more than black dwarfs, stellar remnants that glow no more. To picture such stillness is to imagine the universe stripped of its heartbeat. Think of it in terms you know. Have you ever walked into a house long after the fire in the hearth has gone out? The ashes lie gray and lifeless, but the memory of warmth lingers faintly in the walls. The silence of that room feels heavier because you know it was once alive with crackling flame. That is what a frozen star represents. Not just absence, but memory. A reminder of brilliance that once was. And isn't there something achingly human about that? We, too, live with echoes of moments that once burned brightly, passions, seasons of life, and sometimes we stand in their quiet remains, wondering at the contrast between then and now. As you float past these stellar corpses, your mind begins to wrestle with questions. What does it mean to see something so mighty undone by time? Does it make the universe feel colder, lonelier, or does it give you perspective on the cycles that shape everything? Because if even the stars themselves must dim, then perhaps there is a strange dignity in accepting that nothing burns forever. There is a lesson here, hidden in cosmic silence, the beauty of impermanence. And yet, notice how the imagination resists that silence. Part of you wants the stars to keep shining, to push back against the inevitability of cooling, as though your own hope could reignite them. That desire is more than longing, it is identity. To see yourself as someone who refuses to let the fire go out, who chooses to carry light even in the darkest expanse, is a powerful shift. The stars might freeze, but you are not bound by that inevitability. You can become the ember that endures when everything else cools. Isn't that an empowering thought? Science gives us details that make this vision sharper. White dwarfs, the cooling remnants of medium-sized stars, like our sun, glow faintly for billions of years before fading. Eventually, they will become black dwarfs subjects, so cold they no longer emit heat or light. But here is the mystery. The universe isn't old enough yet for a single black dwarf to exist. The cooling process takes longer than the current age of everything, which means that when you imagine a frozen star, you are peering into a future so distant, so unreachable, that it defies comprehension. In other words, you are stepping into tomorrow's tomorrow, a horizon beyond all horizons. Doesn't that stir both awe and unease inside you? Picture yourself brushing past one of these silent giants. No glow, no warmth, just a sphere of matter, locked in eternal stillness. Light from nearby galaxies washes faintly across its surface, but it reflects nothing back, like a shadow refusing to answer. In that silence, you realize you are witnessing the ultimate contrast. Once a furnace of creation, now colder than the darkest winter night. How strange that the same physics that gave us warmth and starlight also guarantees their end. But here is where your perspective can shift. Instead of despairing at the silence, what if you honored it? What if you saw the frozen star not as death, but as transformation? After all, its energy once forged the atoms in your bones, the carbon you breathe, the calcium in your teeth, the iron in your blood. Those were all birthed in stellar furnaces. Even as the star cools, its legacy endures inside you. To float past such a relic is to remember you are not separate from the cosmos. You are its continuation. Its fire lives on in you, warming your brief span of years against the cold eternity. This thought bends back on itself like a spiral, returning you to the core question: what does it mean for a universe to freeze? If the stars one day all fall silent, does that silence erase meaning, or does it sharpen it? Because perhaps it is the very fact that everything ends that makes the present so luminous. The finite, the fleeting, the fragile, that is where beauty hides. You see it in sunsets, in fading embers, in the last glimmers of a star drifting toward stillness. And so, as you glide through this endless night, think of the frozen stars, not as markers of despair, but as reminders of perspective. Their silence whispers to you, savor warmth while you have it. Cherish the glow while it burns. Carry your own light as far as you can. Because while the cosmos cools, you can still choose to ignite your corner of it. That choice, that agency, is the spark that makes you more than a passenger in the universe. It makes you a participant. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the universe not as it is now, alive with fire and motion, but as it might one day become: endless winter, stretching in every direction. The galaxies you know, those spirals of light and energy, have dimmed into ghostly shapes. Once they blazed like fireworks, scattering brilliance across the darkness. Now they hang suspended, like frost-caught, mid-burst, delicate arcs frozen in place, no longer expanding into brightness, but locked in eternal stillness. The cosmos looks like a cathedral of ice, vast and shimmering, but silent in a way that feels deeper than silence itself. You drift closer, and planets appear as sculptures, chiseled by nothing but time. Oceans, if they once existed, are now slabs of crystal, thick and unmoving. Mountains rise like frozen blades, sharp but lifeless. Even the air, if there were any left, would be hard as glass. Imagine walking across such a surface, your footsteps ringing like echoes in a chamber that has not known sound for billions of years. The beauty is undeniable, but it is beauty without breath, beauty that no creature witnesses, beauty that lingers without warmth to give it meaning. This is the paradox of a frozen cosmos. On one hand, it is magnificent. Crystals glitter on planetary surfaces like diamonds spilled carelessly into the void. Nebulae no longer swirl with gas and light, but appear as soft watercolor stains, pastel remnants of their former selves. Even black holes, those devourers of stars, have evaporated into nothing, leaving behind a clean stillness that feels almost sacred. And yet, with each image, the melancholy deepens. For what is beauty when there is no one left to marvel at it? What is form when function has disappeared? These questions linger like frost in the air, subtle but impossible to ignore. The contrast pulls at your heart. Once, the universe was a blaze of fire. Stars were born in violent collisions. Galaxies danced in spirals. Comets streaked like arrows across planetary skies. Now that same stage is stripped bare, the orchestra long gone, leaving only frozen props behind. Isn't it strange how the memory of motion can make stillness feel even heavier? It is like walking into a ballroom after the music has stopped. Chandeliers still swaying faintly, confetti still scattered on the floor, but no laughter, no dancers, no pulse of life. The grandeur remains, but its soul is missing. And yet, consider the question carefully. Would beauty remain even without warmth? Perhaps it depends not on the cosmos itself, but on the eye that beholds it. In this imagined drift, you are still here. You see galaxies like frozen fireworks, and their silence stirs awe within you. You look at planets carved in ice, and their stillness reminds you of sculpture gardens, of art frozen in time. Even without motion, even without heat, there is elegance. Maybe beauty is not extinguished with fire, but transformed, waiting for a new way to be understood. Could that be true in your own life as well? That even when a chapter grows cold, when passion dims, or seasons change, beauty still lingers, waiting for you to see it differently. There is empowerment hidden in this thought. You realize that you are not only a passenger in this frozen expanse, you are also its interpreter. The frozen cosmos reflects back to you the choices you carry inside, to see desolation or to see art, to mourn the fire or to honor the frost. This identity shift is subtle but profound. You are no longer just the dreamer who longs for warmth. You are the witness who finds meaning in stillness. And doesn't that make you stronger, more resilient, more whole? The eternal winter of the universe also reminds you of something else. Contrast sharpens awareness. You appreciate warmth most when you step in from the cold. You notice silence only after noise has stopped. In the same way, this frozen cosmos makes you grateful for the universe as it is now, filled with fire and sound and light. To imagine everything gone is to realize how extraordinary it is that it still exists. And isn't that the same with your own life? To picture its stillness is to rediscover the miracle of its movement. To glimpse its silence is to cherish its music. So you float on, surrounded by pastel galaxies and glittering ice, and you ask yourself again, is this tragic or beautiful? Maybe it is both. Maybe the frozen cosmos, like all endings, carries two truths at once. It is loss, yes, the extinguishing of light, the silencing of song. But it is also continuity, a kind of art that survives even when the artist has stepped away. In its stillness, the universe offers a final masterpiece, a frozen sculpture stretching across eternity, carved not by hand, but by time itself. And in this reflection, you find yourself softened. The eternal winter is not a warning meant to frighten you, but an invitation meant to deepen you. It whispers that beauty does not depend on permanence, that all can live even in silence, that endings can hold grace. As you breathe into that thought, you feel the cosmos shift inside you, not as fire, not as ice, but as understanding. And with that, you carry on, a traveler through frozen light, awake to the mystery that even in stillness, the universe still speaks. Imagine standing at the edge of this frozen cosmos, trying to feel the passage of time. But here's the strange part: you can't. Time, as you know it, has always been tied to motion. The ticking of a clock, the rising and setting of the sun, the beating of your heart. Without motion, without change, time becomes slippery, almost meaningless. If nothing stirs, if no star burns, and no planet turns, then what does it even mean to say a moment has passed? Think about how you measure time in your own life. You feel it in birthdays, in seasons, in milestones. You know a year has gone by because the calendar shifts, but also because your body carries new marks, new experiences, new growth. Now imagine a universe without those markers: no dawns or dusks, no heat or cooling, no music of cause and effect. It would be like reading a book where every page is the same over and over. Would it still be a story, or just an endless sheet of white? Physicists might argue that time still exists as a coordinate, a dimension stretching on, even in stillness. But from the perspective of living beings, beings like you and me, time is only real if something happens within it. That's why, even on Earth, time sometimes feels elastic. When you're waiting for a call, 5 minutes feels like forever. When you're caught in laughter, an hour slips away unnoticed. Time is not just measured, it's lived. Without life, without change, time loses its texture. This realization can stir both awe and unease. On one hand, the thought of time evaporating into a kind of frozen eternity feels almost peaceful. No rush, no deadlines, no endings, just endless stillness. But on the other, doesn't it also feel disorienting? Your identity has been shaped by change, by the flow from one chapter to another. Who would you be without that river carrying you forward? Would you still feel like yourself if you could no longer measure before and after? Here is where contrast does its work. You begin to appreciate the gift of time as you know it, precisely because you imagine its absence. The flow of seconds and minutes, though sometimes burdensome, is also what gives you meaning. Without it, there would be no memory, no anticipation, no growth. Even pain, in its own way, reminds you that time moves, that no feeling lasts forever. Isn't that secretly comforting? That everything, joy, sorrow, wonder, heartbreaks, carried along the same current, always shifting, never stagnant. So, If the frozen cosmos shows us a universe where time seems to stop, then perhaps its message to you is hidden in plain sight. Value the breath that rises and falls. Value the fleetingness of now, precisely because it will never come again. This is not a call to urgency, but to presence. A reminder that the ordinary flow of time is extraordinary when you pause to notice it. There is also empowerment in this vision. If time is only meaningful when something changes, then you have the power to create that meaning by making choices, by daring to grow, by stepping into the unknown. You bend time into a story worth remembering. Without your decisions, the days would blur. With them, the days become chapters, each carrying weight and shape. Doesn't that make you feel less like a passenger and more like an author? Curiosity lingers, though. Could the universe ever truly stop changing? Even in a frozen state, quantum physics suggests tiny fluctuations, whispers of uncertainty that never vanish completely. Perhaps absolute stillness is impossible. Perhaps the cosmos, even at its quietest, carries a pulse too faint for us to see. And if so, maybe time never fully stops. Maybe it only slows into a dreamlike state where seconds stretch into centuries and centuries into eternities. What would it feel like to live in such a place where each heartbeat lasted 1,000 years? Let your imagination wander there. A frozen cosmos doesn't erase mystery, it deepens it. The lack of change makes you hyper-aware of the smallest shifts, like listening for a whisper in an empty hall. Suddenly, a flicker becomes monumental. A ripple becomes profound. Wouldn't it be remarkable if, in the very act of freezing, the universe made us more attentive, more reverent, toward even the tiniest spark of movement? This contrast brings us back to your own life. In the rush of modern days, you may forget to notice the small motions, the way sunlight moves across your desk, the way your breath steadies when you pause, the way silence hums between two spoken words. The frozen cosmos invites you to see these things anew. If stillness magnifies meaning, then even now, within your world of constant motion, you can pause and notice the finer textures of time. So perhaps the eternal winter of the universe is not only a vision of what may come, but a mirror reflecting what already is. You stand within a stream of time that moves because you move, that matters because you live. To see it vanish in imagination is to reclaim its wonder in reality. And that realization is not cold at all, it is warm, grounding, almost tender. And as you let that warmth sink in, you carry forward a new understanding. Time is not just a backdrop to your life, but the fabric woven by your choices, your changes, your awareness. Even if the cosmos one day freezes, within you the river still flows. And that river, however brief, is precious beyond measure. The universe is frozen. Could life endure? It feels like a paradox, doesn't it? Because life, as you know it, has always been tied to warmth. Fire at the heart of the hearth, sunlight pouring onto green leaves, the gentle heat of blood coursing through your veins. Without warmth, without energy, life as you've experienced it seems impossible. Yet the question lingers like a stubborn ember in the snow. Could something, anything, find a way to exist in a cosmos stripped of heat? When you look to Earth, you find that life is not as fragile as it first appears. In the deepest ocean trenches, where sunlight has never touched, Organisms thrive near boiling vents. In deserts, microbes endure scorching heat and suffocating dryness. And perhaps most astonishing, extremophiles have been found clinging to existence in frozen Antarctic lakes, surviving under ice so thick that no warmth of the surface ever seeps through. Life, in all its stubborn defiance, always seems to whisper, "I can adapt." NASA has studied these extremophiles closely, not out of idle curiosity, but because they are windows into possibility. If life can survive in Earth's harshest corners, why not in the frozen pockets of space? Tiny microbes can shut themselves down, entering states of near cementation, waiting centuries, sometimes millennia for conditions to shift just enough to allow them to stir again. Could something like that endure in a frozen universe, lying dormant, hidden in the cracks of ice crystals, drifting endlessly through the void? It's here that imagination sharpens curiosity. Imagine beings unlike anything you've ever known, not warm-blooded or green-leaved, but cold-crafted, built for stillness. Perhaps their chemistry does not rely on heat at all, but on the faint flickers of quantum fluctuations, the whispers of movement that never fully vanish even in the coldest conditions. Perhaps they do not need time as you understand it, but exist in pulses-long silences, broken by brief awakenings. Life, but not as you recognize it. Doesn't the thought stir both wonder and a subtle fear of missing out? That somewhere in the frozen expanse, secrets of survival might exist beyond your reach, waiting to be discovered. Consider artificial life as well. If organic forms struggle, could machines continue? A frozen cosmos might snuff out stars, but it could also preserve structures for eons. Imagine civilizations so advanced that they designed life not dependent on heat, but on information, on patterns, on memory etched into resilient frameworks. Digital minds, perhaps resting dormant until sparked awake by the smallest flicker of usable energy. In this eternal winter, the torch of life may not pass through biology, but through code. An inheritance written not in DNA but in algorithms. Would that still be life? Or would it be something new, altogether an identity that challenges your very definition of what it means to exist? The contrast is haunting. On one side, the fragile warmth of life, delicate, fleeting, always needing fuel. On the other, the possibility of something alien, enduring without fire, thriving in silence. This sharp difference invites you to reflect on your own place in the story of life. You might feel small, knowing how dependent you are on the sun's grace, but you might also feel empowered, realizing that life as a whole, whether microbial or mechanical, has a resilience that stretches beyond imagination. The suspense lingers because the answers are unfinished. Scientists continue to search the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn, probing for hints of life beneath frozen shells. Each discovery of a stubborn microbe, each hint of chemistry that whispers possibility, feels like a clue to a larger puzzle, that life may not only survive in warmth, but may also reinvent itself in cold. And if it can reinvent there, who's to say it could not reinvent in the frozen universe of the far future? Here is the transformative invitation hidden within the question. If life might find a way in a frozen cosmos, then surely you can find a way in the winters of your own existence. The cold seasons of the heart, the silent stretches where warmth feels absent, are not the end. They are invitations to adapt, to endure, to trust that somewhere within you is an ember that refuses to go out. Isn't it striking how the cosmos mirrors the struggles of your own journey? The universe asks, again and again, not whether you will avoid the cold, but whether you will discover the strength to live through it. And so, the frozen cosmos becomes more than an abstract idea. It becomes a mirror of resilience, a meditation on the question that echoes across stars and souls alike. Could life survive without heat? The answer is not final, and perhaps it never will be. But in the asking, you find both humility and empowerment. Humility in realizing how delicate life is. Empowerment in seeing how far it can stretch beyond the limits you thought possible. As you breathe into this thought, you may notice a shift within yourself. Survival is not only about heat or comfort or certainty, it is about adaptation, patience, and trust in the unseen. And maybe, just maybe, that truth is the real secret that life in a frozen universe would carry. That existence, in any form, is always more tenacious than you expect. Imagine looking up into the night sky and seeing not the twinkling motion of stars, not the slow turning of constellations, but a scene forever stilled. Galaxies, once fiery spirals, frozen mid-dance, their arcs of light suspended like cosmic fireworks caught in a photograph. There is a kind of beauty in it, but also a haunting stillness. The way a firework looks breathtaking for an instant before fading to black. Only here, the fading never comes. Picture the Milky Way as you know it, a river of stars flowing across the dark. Now, imagine that river suddenly solidified, every wave of light halted, every ripple of dust unmoving. It would be like standing on the shore of an ocean, frozen in mid. You could see the crests, the troughs, the motion implied, but no sound, no splash, no crash against the rocks. Doesn't the silence of that image send a shiver down your spine? This contrast between what once was and what would be strikes deeply. Galaxies are symbols of energy, of swirling possibility, of time in motion. To see them still is to confront the idea that even the grandest dances can come to rest. And yet, paradoxically, there is something uninspiring about their stillness. Each spiral arm would remain etched in place, glowing like a stained glass window lit by the memory of ancient fire. Perhaps in this frozen state, the cosmos would reveal details never before visible, secrets normally blurred by motion. The universe, in stopping bid, might finally hold still long enough for its intricacies to be seen. Consider the psychology of fireworks themselves. People gather, year after year, to watch them, even though they last only seconds. Their fleetingness is part of the wonder. They vanish before you can fully hold them. But imagine if they never vanished. Would they lose their magic, or would their beauty deepen in permanence? The frozen galaxy invites you into that question. Is wonder tied to motion, or can it survive in eternal stillness? Astrophysics gives this vision a frame. Galaxies are born of energy, rotation, and gravity's delicate pull. They move because of imbalance, because of forces at play. But if the cosmic temperature dropped to the edge of absolute stillness, those forces would grow faint. The stars would burn out, motion would slow, and eventually even gravity's work would fade. The fireworks would not explode in chaos, but freeze mid, a spectacle of energy transformed into a sculpture of silence. Now, Let your imagination walk through such a gallery. You float past one galaxy, its arms shimmering like ribbons of crystal, each star a jewel locked in place. Another galaxy beside it curves like a frozen wave, its tidal tail stretching outward, but never reaching further. Entire clusters hang together, like chandeliers suspended in an endless ballroom. If you could drift there forever, would you feel lonely, or would you feel reverent, standing in the greatest museum of frozen light ever conceived? The emotional resonance lies in the contrast to your daily life. On Earth, everything is fleeting. Seasons change, faces age, even mountains erode. Nothing holds still. To imagine the universe frozen is to imagine a place where change stops, where beauty is preserved beyond decay. It stirs both longing and melancholy. Longing because part of you craves permanence, to hold on to what you love without fear of losing it. Melancholy because you know that motion and change are also what give life its spark. Without them, permanence can feel like silence too deep to bear. This is where identity shifting enters. By picturing galaxies as frozen fireworks, you begin to see your own life differently. The moments you rush through, the joys you barely pause to notice, they are your fireworks. They flare, they dazzle, and then they fade. But they matter precisely because they move, because they end. The frozen universe shows you the shadow side of permanence, that without endings, beginnings lose meaning. And so, perhaps the beauty of galaxies as fireworks is not in their endless preservation, but in their brief, spectacular motion. Yet, there is empowerment here, too. To imagine a frozen galaxy is to glimpse the fragility of everything, and in that fragility, to rediscover the power of attention. You cannot freeze your life, but you can notice it more deeply. You can pause, breathe, and let the fleeting fireworks of your own moments etch themselves into memory. Isn't that, in its own way, more precious than eternity? The curiosity loop remains open. Would a frozen cosmos truly be beautiful, or would it be eerie beyond comprehension? Would galaxies locked in place inspire awe, or would they remind you of something lost forever? No one knows. The answer may lie beyond human imagination, lingering like a question in the silence of the stars. But in sitting with that question, you find yourself more awake to the beauty of now. So as you drift back from this vision of galaxies as frozen fireworks, you carry with you not only the image of cosmic stillness, but the reminder that your own universe is still alive, still moving, still filled with sparks that flare and fade. The frozen cosmos becomes not only a distant possibility, but a mirror reminding you to cherish the motion in your own sky before it stills. Time is one of those companions we rarely question. It ticks in the background of every meal, every sunrise, every goodbye. You don't see it, but you feel it, moving you forward, whether you're ready or not. But what happens to time when the universe itself slows to a halt? If the stars no longer burn, if galaxies no longer spin, if nothing shifts from one state to another, can we still say that time exists? Or would it dissolve into silence, like a clock that has lost its pendulum? Einstein taught us that time and motion are inseparable, like dance partners who cannot move without each other. His theory of relativity shows that time bends and stretches depending on gravity and speed. A clock ticking near a black hole runs slower than one on Earth. A traveler moving close to the speed of light would return younger than those who stayed behind. Time, then, is not absolute. Time is elastic, woven into the fabric of motion itself. But if motion vanishes in a frozen universe, would time simply stretch into infinity, or would it vanish altogether? Think of your own life for a moment. Have you ever had a day that seemed endless, where each minute dragged like an anchor? Contrast that with moments that vanished too quickly, a laugh with someone you love, a sunset you wished would last longer. Time is not only measured in clocks, it is measured in experience, in the rhythm of change. Without change, without motion, the mind loses its anchor. Imagine sitting in a room where nothing shifts, the air unmoving, the light unchanging. Minutes would blur into hours, hours into a timeless haze. Would you even know that time was passing? In a frozen cosmos, the same question unfolds on a grander scale. Galaxies halted in mid-spiral, stars extinguished, particles too cold to vibrate. There would be no markers of before and after. It would be like stepping into a photograph stretched across eternity. Does a photograph hold time, or does it erase it? The paradox is that the very stillness might feel endless, yet in physics, time could become meaningless. If no change is possible, time loses its purpose. And yet, here lies the tension that awakens wonder. Perhaps time would remain even without motion. Physicists speak of space-time as a fabric, and even if the threads stop vibrating, the fabric may still exist. You would not feel its passage, but its possibility would remain, like a riverbed waiting for water that never comes. Isn't it haunting to think that time could survive you, but in a way you could no longer perceive? Philosophers have long asked, is time something we move through, or something we create with our minds? When you wait in silence, bored or anxious, you feel every second tick by. But when you are absorbed laughing, creating, dreaming, time slips through your fingers unnoticed. So, in a frozen universe, would time stop, or would it simply become unnoticeable? Perhaps it would still flow, but without motion, without memory, without change. You would never feel its current. This is where identity shifts come alive. By imagining time in a frozen universe, you begin to look at your own minutes differently. Suddenly, that long commute, that slow evening, that restless waiting, all of it becomes precious, because it means time is alive, it is moving, it is yours to feel. A frozen cosmos reminds you that time is not the enemy. It is the very proof that you exist in motion, in change, in possibility. To lose it would be to lose the rhythm of life itself. And yet, there's empowerment here, too. If time feels long or short, depending on your state of mind, then you hold more power over it than you realize. The same hour can be unbearable or joyful, depending on how you live it. Isn't that a kind of freedom? In contrast to the frozen silence of the cosmos, your world brims with motion, with heat, with change. You can shape your time not by stopping it, but by noticing it more fully. So, as you imagine yourself drifting through a frozen universe where time itself holds its breath, you might begin to feel grateful for the ticking of your own life. Every change, every rise and fall, every fleeting moment is a reminder that you are not suspended in eternal stillness. You are moving, aging, growing, living. The frozen universe is a mirror that shows you the value of your own rushing river of time. A river you can never step into twice, but one that carries you forward with meaning And so, the question lingers. If nothing changes, does time still exist? Perhaps in physics, yes. But in experience, in life, in meaning, time is inseparable from motion. Without it, eternity becomes indistinguishable from silence. And maybe that is the quietest lesson of the frozen cosmos. To treasure the flow while you have it, before the river ever dreams of turning to ice. Life, as we know it, is written in warmth. The flicker of a campfire, the glow of the sun, the heat of your own body, it all whispers the same truth. Energy sustains existence. Strip away that warmth, and life seems destined to fade. Yet the story of survival is never so simple. When you ask whether anything could endure in a universe frozen to stillness, you are really asking how far resilience can stretch, how many ways existence can reinvent itself when the familiar rules collapse. On Earth, every living thing is bound to energy. Plants reach for sunlight, animals burn calories like fuel. Even the smallest microbes thrive on chemical reactions that release heat. Take that away, and it feels like the end. But resilience has always surprised us. At the bottom of the ocean, where no sunlight has ever touched, life thrives around hydrothermal vents, creatures feeding on chemical warmth seeping from the Earth's crust. If life can root itself in such hostile darkness, could it not also adapt in other, colder corners of the cosmos? The laws of physics remind us that absolute zero, the point where all motion stops, is more a boundary than a destination. The universe may grow colder as it expands, but reaching complete stillness is like chasing a horizon. There will always be fluctuations, pockets of energy, remnants of decay. Perhaps survival in a frozen cosmos would not look like the thriving forests we know, but more like whispers of persistence, organisms clinging to the faintest scraps of motion, slowing themselves to near timelessness just to hold on. Consider the tardigrade, a tiny creature here on Earth. When conditions grow hostile, it enters a cryptobiotic state, suspending almost every process of life until warmth and water return. To see it curled into dormancy is to glimpse a living paradox, not fully alive, not fully dead, but patient. If such a strategy works on a microscopic scale here, why not? Could there be forms of life capable of wading through cosmic winters, banking on the chance of warmth, millions or billions of years away? But survival is not only about biology, it is also about perception. If humans were somehow present in such a frozen universe, the challenge would be as much psychological as physical. The absence of heat means the absence of movement, of rhythm, of change. Without the comfort of a sunrise or the warmth of touch, would hope itself begin to freeze? When nothing stirs, when no fire burns, it becomes harder to feel alive in more than the physical sense. Contrast makes us human. Joy against sorrow, warmth against cold. Take away that contrast, and existence risks feeling hollow. Yet there is also empowerment in considering such extremes. If life could find a way to persist without heat, it would redefine survival itself. It would tell us that the essence of being is not warmth, not comfort, not even change, but sheer persistence. That even in silence, even in cold, the spark of life can hold itself steady, refusing to vanish. Doesn't that stir something inside youth? The reminder that resilience is not about ease, but about endurance. And maybe this reflection isn't really about the distant cosmos at all. Maybe it's about you, here and now, in your own seasons of winter. Because you, too, have faced moments when warmth seemed far away, lonely nights, silent struggles, times when the world around you felt unyielding. Yet, like the tardigrade, like those imagined survivors of a frozen cosmos, you carried on, sometimes by slowing down, sometimes by holding your breath and waiting for the light to return. Survival is not always fiery or dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet, patient, stubborn. So, could anything survive in a frozen universe? The rational answer leans toward no. Life, as we know it, requires heat, and without it, the cosmos drifts into stillness. But the deeper answer, the one whispered by resilience itself, leans toward yes, not in the way we expect, but in the quiet persistence of possibility. As long as there is even the faintest flicker of energy, the faintest hope of movement, survival cannot be ruled out. Life has always been a master of adaptation, and perhaps that is the truest definition of survival. Not warmth, not growth, but the refusal to disappear. Time winds through your days like a quiet river, sometimes steady, sometimes rushing, sometimes nearly stopped. You feel it in small interior measures, a breath that calms you, a call that makes your heart leap, long afternoon when patience thins. Yet when cosmos itself cools and motion fades, the familiar sense of time begins to unravel. Does time require motion to mean anything? Einstein showed us that time and motion are entangled. Clocks slow near gravity wells, and speed bends duration. Time is not a separate stage on which events perform. It is woven with the movement of things themselves. On an ordinary morning, an hour becomes what it does, because something changes inside it. Waiting stretches minutes into intolerable breadth. Love compresses hours into a glance. Our subjective clock is shaped by attention and change. In a frozen universe where atoms tremble less and stars stop burning, the scaffolding that makes moments distinct would thin. Without contrast, you cannot feel the river flowing. The result is not merely cold physics, but a psychological blankness, a sense that time has lost its grain. Scientific language answers in another key. Space-time, as Einstein conceived it, remains a structure regardless of temperature. Distances and intervals still exist. Expansion of space can persist while local motion dwindles. That means time might be present, even if nothing noticeably happens. But here is the rub. Theory and lived experience are different currencies. A metric that counts intervals does not tell you whether anything is felt. For life as you know it, feeling requires events, photons, collisions, processes that mark before and after. Remove those, and the texture of time becomes a pale echo. There is a peculiar mercy in this thought. When everything else freezes, the tiniest event gains monumental weight. A single decay, a lone photon traveling for unfathomable stretches, would become a headline in an otherwise blank chronicle. Think of how a whispered apology transforms a strained relationship. Small gestures reshape the narrative when larger movements are absent. In the cold cosmos, the infinitesimal would matter enormously. That idea reframes your choices. Small acts can become anchors of meaning precisely because they stand out against stillness. Identity depends on sequence. Your memories form a storyline because events follow one another. Cause gives meaning to consequence. If the sequence is erased, the story loosens. Who are you without the threads that stitched you? Paradoxically, freedom also appears here. If narrative constraints dissolve, the pressure to perform according to a plotline lightens. You might become less defined by what has happened and more by who you choose to be in the present, free from the expectations of a chain of tomorrows. That shift is unnerving and liberating at once. Philosophers and physicists sometimes suggest that time is emergent rather than primitive, that it springs from correlations between changing systems. If that is so, then a frozen universe would be the clearest test. With interactions minimized, emergent time would wither. Yet the very capacity to ask the question keeps something alive. Inquiry itself is a temporal act. Your thinking folds moments into a narrative and thus rekindles, in miniature, the motion that the cosmos has lost. In other words, consciousness can weave time back into being, if only locally. This possibility is empowering. If attention and action can create temporal texture, then you have agency over the meaning of your days. Short rituals, the cup of tea, a sent message, a brief walk are stitches that bind hours into something dense and treasured. They resist the flattening that a frozen cosmos implies. You cannot stop all endings, but you can infuse your hours with patterns that outlast them, letting each small motion be a testament to presence. There is also a consolation, even when motion grows faint. Relationships and creations already set in motion persist as echoes. Stories you told, hands you held, paintings you made, these are effects that ripple outward. Their traces are not easily scrubbed by cosmic cold. They become a form of temporal presence that outlives immediate sensation. Perhaps the universe may grow quiet, but the patterns you left will carry a kind of slow, lingering time. And remember this, the universe that you inhabit, now loud, messy warms, not a flaw, but gift. The urgency you sometimes feel is not a punishment, but a call to presence. There is power in choosing where to focus, in amplifying small moments into lifelines. By tending tiny motions, greetings, small acts, brief reconciliations, you weave a continuity that no cold could erase. These choices become the way you carry forward warmth into whatever comes next. If cosmos cools one day, your acts will stand as soft beacons, subtle proofs that time was lived, not merely counted. The stars above you have always seemed eternal. They were the quiet witnesses of your childhood nights, the patient companions of lovers, sailors, dreamers. To look up and see their scattered fire was to feel both small and held by something vast. But every flame, no matter how large, carries the seed of its own silence. Picture this. One by one, the stars begin to fade. Not all at once, not in a single dramatic collapse, but in a slow procession, like candles being snuffed in a cathedral after a long vigil. The universe holds its breath as light retreats. It feels impossible to imagine. After all, the stars seem so abundant, their light so ceaseless. Yet astrophysics tells us their fates are written. They age, they burn, they spend their fuel just as bodies tire, just as voices crack with years. Some stars flare brilliantly before collapsing. Others stretch their lifespans across billions of years, dimming gradually. Their rhythms mirror the rhythms of life, you know. Some people shine brightly and briefly, others endure with quiet steadiness. Both, however, eventually must yield. The death of starlight is not an exception. It is the universal pattern. There is grief in this truth. Imagine a night sky with fewer and fewer lights. The constellations that once told stories across cultures would fragment, their mythic animals and heroes losing shape. Future travelers, if there were any left, would look up and find no guides, no points to navigate, no scattered reminders of home. The cosmos would become a darker, lonelier stage. That image tugs at something inside you, because it mirrors your own fear of loss, the fading of familiar lights in your personal sky, whether they are loved ones, places, or even versions of yourself that you must let go. And yet there is beauty in endings, too. When a star dies, it is not simply extinguished, it transforms. Supernova scatter heavy elements into the void, seeding galaxies with the building blocks of planets and bodies. You and I are made of those remnants. Iron in your blood, calcium in your bones, oxygen in your breath, all were forged in stellar cores and gifted by explosions that marked the end of one light's journey. The silence of a star is not the silence of nothing. It is the silence that leaves behind possibility. Still, the thought of a universe after all stars are gone has a chilling stillness. No warm suns to cradle planets, no golden dawns breaking horizons, no steady glow to mark the rhythm of day and night. Imagine walking through a place where every lamp has been extinguished, where shadows stretch endlessly because nothing burns to banish them. That is what awaits when the final stars exhaust their fuel. The universe, once radiant with billions of lights, will be reduced to an endless dark ocean, and you cannot help but wonder, what would that silence feel like? Not silence as in sound, but silence of sight, silence of warmth. In such a place, there would be no more sunsets, no more campfires beneath an open sky. The last observers, if any remained, would live in a cosmos that no longer tells stories in the language of stars. To them, history would feel like myth. Once there were lights, once the universe shimmered, once there was brilliance. Now, only memory. The comparison to your own life is intimate. You, too, are lit by an inner fire, your energy, your passions, your heartbeat. And like the stars, that fire is not forever. This knowledge could be heavy, but it can also sharpen your awareness. Knowing that everything beautiful is temporary can make it more precious. The time you share with others becomes luminous precisely because it cannot be repeated infinitely. The presence of endings is what gives weight to beginnings. Think of the nostalgia you feel when flipping through old photos, when hearing a song from your youth, when walking through a place you once knew well. That bittersweet ache is your personal version of watching stars fade. It is grief braided with gratitude. It is the knowledge that light existed, and in some way still does, inside you. The universe's future darkness is not entirely tragic when you realize that each moment of light now carries infinite value. And yet the question lingers like a whisper. What follows when stars vanish forever? Does the universe become a cold tomb, or does something unexpected stir in the dark? That open loop pulls your imagination forward, hinting that silence may not be the final word. Just as the night gives way to dawn, perhaps there are mysteries yet unrevealed, waiting beyond the long sleep of starlight. So let this thought cradle you tonight. The stars you see now are gifts from the past, light that has traveled across unimaginable distances to find your eyes. They may not burn forever, but their journey reminds you that even in a future where silence rules, the echoes of brilliance endure. And perhaps that is the secret, but its transformation into memory, into matter, into you. When you think of galaxies, you think of motion. Spirals unfurling like vast seashells, stars swirling around hidden centers, rivers of light stretching across unimaginable distances. They are living cities of the cosmos, always moving, always reshaping themselves. But now, let yourself drift into a different vision. Galaxies stilled, their graceful arms frozen mid-sweep, suspended in silence like glass ornaments in an eternal display. It is a beauty that steals your breath, but beneath the beauty lies an unsettling quiet, a sense that something essential has gone missing. In this frozen universe, the spirals no longer spin, clusters no longer dance toward or away from one another. Instead, they hang in space like snow globes that have just been shaken and then held still. Every glittering fragment suspended, never falling, never settling. What you see is dazzling diamond rivers of stars crystallized in their tracks. Explosions of frozen light resembling fireworks caught in the moment before they vanish. The universe becomes a gallery of celestial sculptures, each galaxy locked in its final pose. The metaphor is irresistible. Galaxies as frozen cities. Think of the cities you know, built of stone and steel, yet made alive by movement, footsteps echoing on streets, windows glowing at dusk, voices mingling in crowded markets. Now imagine those same cities paused, streets empty, fountains frozen, lights flickering but unmoving. There is order, there is beauty, but no pulse. The galaxies, too, become exquisite but hollow, like cathedrals filled with silence rather than song. And as you stand in this vision, the stillness presses against you, reminding you that beauty without motion carries both serenity and sorrow. There is something deeply lonely about this frozen cosmos. To wander through these galaxies would be to walk through empty neighborhoods, grand avenues of light without a single traveler. Would you be the last observer, drifting past spiral arms turned to crystal, knowing no voice would answer your call? That loneliness resonates because it mirrors the fear hidden in every heart, the fear of being left without witness, of becoming the only spark in an empty room. The frozen galaxies speak to that fear, amplifying it with cosmic scale. And yet, strangely, serenity lingers there too. Without motion, without chaos, the galaxies rest. Their forms, preserved forever, cannot decay or collide. The violence of black holes swallowing stars, of galaxies tearing each other apart in their gravity dances, is gone. What remains is peace and eternal stillness that might feel like a sigh finally released. You may even find comfort in imagining such a rest, as though the universe itself has stopped striving, stopped burning, stopped hungering, and simply chosen to be. The contrast between loneliness and serenity is what makes this image so powerful. It is like walking in a winter forest, snow blanketing every branch, the air so still that even your breath seems to echo. In that moment, you may feel both a pang of isolation and a deep calm. One does not cancel the other. They coexist, sharpening one another. The frozen galaxies hold the same duality, vast silence paired with fragile beauty, emptiness woven with tranquility. Consider how this vision changes the way you think about motion in your own life. You rush, you strive, you fill your days with tasks and goals, always moving toward something. But if time froze for you, if your world became a snow globe in which nothing stirred, what would remain? Which gestures, which memories, which relationships would be suspended in crystal clarity? The frozen galaxies remind you that movement is what makes existence vivid, but stillness is what allows you to notice its shape. Perhaps both are necessary, the rush of stars in motion and the pause that lets you see their form. The curiosity lingers. If you were to drift through these frozen cities of light, what would you feel? Would awe outweigh sorrow, or would sorrow swallow awe? Would you try to ignite warmth again, or would you surrender to the hush? Would you feel like a trespasser in a place where time itself had given up, or a guardian of a beauty preserved for no one but you? These questions tug at the imagination, refusing easy answers. They keep you leaning forward, wondering if silence is an end or a beginning in disguise. Perhaps the most haunting thought is this: even in their stillness, galaxies would continue to shine, their frozen light carrying across the dark like lanterns in a sleeping city. You would see them, you would marvel, but you would know they are only echoes. No voices sing behind those windows. No footsteps cross those bridges of stars. They are relics, not homes. The realization cuts deep, because it forces you to ask, what makes beauty alive? Is it the shape itself, or the stories it carries? So, as you let this vision settle into you, hold both truths together. The frozen galaxies are breathtaking in their perfection, yet hollow in their silence. They remind you that stillness can reveal beauty, but motion gives it meaning. And they whisper a final, lingering question. If the universe became a city of ice, would you wander as its last traveler? Or would you choose to close your eyes, carrying its frozen lights inward, where warmth still flickers in the quiet chambers of your own mind? They are the universe's great monsters, the silent predators that once swallowed stars whole, bending space and time into their invisible maws. Black holes, beings so powerful that not even light could escape their grasp. For billions of years, they ruled like ancient kings, pulling galaxies into shape, feeding on suns, and guarding the darkest corners of the cosmos. Yet even kings are not eternal. In the deep freeze of a frozen universe, even black holes are doomed to fade. Their story is not one of violent conquest, but of slow, whispering surrender. It may sound impossible. After all, how could something so unstoppable, so absolute, ever end? But the truth is, even black holes are leaking away their strength, little by little. This slow unraveling is called Hawking radiation, a strange quantum whisper that allows energy to slip away from the very edge of a black hole's horizon. To the human mind, it is almost absurd. Giants collapsing, not in an explosion, but evaporating into nothingness, as if the universe itself were quietly exhaling their last breath. Imagine how subtle that process is. If you stood near one and somehow survived its gravity, you would not see fireworks, no blinding death throes. Instead, you'd see a faint shimmer, like the last ember glowing in a dying fire, a whisper of warmth in a universe that has already gone silent. It is the faintest glow in all of creation, a tiny beacon against the black curtain of frozen space, The contrast is staggering, isn't it? Once, black holes were symbols of terror, devouring everything that dared to drift too close. Now, in the cold death of the cosmos, they are fragile, dwindling, vulnerable. Their power, once infinite, is slowly undone, not by collision or explosion, but by the smallest trickle of light escaping where light was never meant to be. Even gravity, the most loyal of forces, cannot keep hold forever. And there is something strangely human about that. Think of the strongest people you've ever known, the ones who seemed unshakable, untouchable. Time has a way of humbling them too, wearing them down in quiet, almost invisible ways. Just like a black hole, strength can look immortal until you notice the tiny fractures, the quiet exhalations. Perhaps the universe is reminding us that nothing, no matter how powerful, escapes the slow erosion of time. But here's the part that stirs curiosity. What happens after? When the last black hole finally exhales its final whisper, what remains? Scientists speculate that after untold ages, black holes will vanish completely, leaving behind only a faint pulse of energy. That's it, the end of the end. No remains, no bones, no scars. Just the memory of what once was, carried in a final shimmer across the void. Picture the scene, the universe, utterly frozen and dark. Galaxies long stilled, stars extinguished, planets forgotten. And in that silence, a black hole radiates its last photon of light. A lonely flicker that travels nowhere, illuminating nothing. It simply slips into the abyss, unnoticed, unneeded, unseen. And then silence deepens further. The silence, after even silence, has ended. Does that thought make you uneasy or strangely peaceful? There's a paradox in it. On one hand, it feels like grief, like watching the last candle in a cathedral go out. On the other, it feels serene, as though the universe, after its long turbulence, finally gets to rest. Maybe there's comfort in knowing that even monsters soften with time, that even darkness cannot hold its grip forever. And perhaps that's the lesson hidden here for us. Power fades, fear fades, even the most consuming of shadows eventually dissolves into nothingness. What endures, then, is not the force itself, but the story it tells. Black holes once shaped galaxies, carved the structure of the cosmos, and now, even as they fade, they remind us of impermanence. Their faint glow is a message. Everything has its time, and even in endings, there is a strange kind of beauty. So the universe moves one step closer to stillness. One more chapter closing. Stars have already gone silent. Galaxies have frozen into ice, and now, even gravity's greatest beasts are drifting toward their final vanishing. Yet, with every end comes an opening question. If even black holes are not forever, what comes after their last whisper? The cosmos keeps its secrets close, but it invites us to wonder, to lean into the mystery rather than fear it, because perhaps the real story isn't about how the universe dies, but how deeply it invites us to imagine what waits beyond. They say the visible universe, the stars, the planets, the glowing gas clouds is only a small fraction of what truly exists. The rest, the greater part, is hidden in shadow. Dark matter, dark energy, two names we give to mysteries we can't yet see, forces we can't yet touch, and yet without them the cosmos as we know it would unravel. They are the invisible scaffolding of reality, the quiet current beneath the ocean of existence. But in a frozen universe, where heat, motion, and light all fade into silence, what becomes of these unseen giants? Do they rest, or do they endure? It's tempting to imagine that when everything visible stops, the invisible must stop too. But history warns us not to make such assumptions. For decades, astronomers believed the universe's expansion should be slowing, tugged backward by gravity's relentless pull. Yet, when we looked closer, we discovered something shocking. The universe was not slowing down but accelerating, as though pushed by a hidden wind. That invisible wind is what we call dark energy, a force that makes up nearly 70% of all that exists. If even now, when galaxies still shine, we cannot fully explain it, how can we predict what it might do in the frozen silence to come? Think of dark energy as the ultimate paradox. If it continues to push forever, then even in the icebound stillness, the universe will keep stretching endlessly, until every particle is too far from every other to interact. In that vision, the freeze is not a cage but a great dispersal, scattering everything so thinly across space that the cosmos becomes an infinite loneliness. But what if dark energy itself fades, quiets, weakens? Then the frozen stillness might hold a pause with no end, like an ocean turned solid, its currents locked but still present beneath the surface. Which of these pictures is true? We don't know. And that unknowing is what draws us closer. Dark matter, on the other hand, is the anchor, the invisible glue. It holds galaxies together, keeps stars in their spiraling arms, rather than flying apart. Without it, the Milky Way itself would dissolve. But if galaxies freeze, what does dark matter do? Does it also harden, like ice forming around bones, forever locking the structures it once shaped? Or does it keep tugging, pulling silently on what no longer moves? Perhaps it becomes like a ghost pulling at a house long abandoned, a force without purpose, yet unwilling to fade. There's something strangely human in this riddle, isn't there? Think about the forces in your own life, the ones that shape you even when you can't name them. Love, fear, memory, identity. You can't always see them, but they are the gravity holding you together. When everything else feels frozen, your plans stalled, your path unclear, those hidden currents still move within you, nudging, pulling, reminding you that unseen doesn't mean absent. Dark matter and dark energy are like that on the grandest scale. Unseen currents, silent hands, reminders that what we can't measure may matter most. And here's where the mystery deepens. What if these forces don't freeze at all? What if, long after stars fade and galaxies turn to ice, dark matter still clings to its task, and dark energy still pushes outward? That would mean the universe isn't truly frozen, it's only that the parts we see have stopped. Beneath the silence, beneath the stillness, the great engine is still running. Invisible, unstoppable, writing its story in ways we cannot yet read. That thought alone sparks a quiet kind of FOMO. What secrets are still unfolding just beyond our perception that we may never witness? But there's beauty in not knowing. The human mind often aches for answers, for clean endings, for truths carved in stone. Yet the cosmos reminds us that mystery itself is a gift. If everything were explained, the universe would feel smaller. By leaving dark matter and dark energy in shadow, the cosmos invites us to keep dreaming, to keep asking, to live in a state of wonder rather than certainty. It's like walking across a frozen lake while knowing there's a whole world moving beneath the ice. Currents we may never map, but that still shape the journey. So, do these hidden forces freeze too? No one can say. Maybe they continue, invisible threads weaving, even as all else unravels. Maybe they vanish, leaving behind only silence. But either way, they remind us that reality is deeper than what we see, that the greatest truths are often the ones we carry in faith, curiosity, and imagination. And maybe that's the real lesson here, that even in a frozen universe, not everything is still. Some forces never stop, and some mysteries never end. In the silence of a frozen universe, the question arises, what remains when all the voices of creation have gone quiet? No stars singing, no galaxies colliding, no warmth, no movement, only stillness stretching into eternity. And in that stillness, you might begin to notice something unsettling, something tender. You might hear your own heart more clearly, without the noise of the cosmos. The only sound left is the echo of yourself. We already know a shadow of this feeling here on Earth. Think of a winter night when snow has blanketed everything, muffling the world into silence. You step outside, and for a moment it feels as though you're the only person alive. The air is sharp, your breath visible, the streets empty. It's beautiful, but also lonely. That mix of peace and longing is what the universe itself would feel like in its frozen silence. A cosmic winter night that never ends. There's a strange duality to that kind of solitude. On one side, there is comfort, the calmness that comes when nothing presses in on you, when the chaos finally settles and your mind can rest. On the other side, there is the ache of absence, the reminder of all that once was, but no longer is. The frozen cosmos mirrors our own lives in that way. Haven't you ever had moments where silence felt healing, and yet, if it stretched too long, it became heavy? Where being alone made you stronger, but also reminded you of how deeply you longed for connection? The frozen universe is like a magnified version of that. Imagine standing in a place where nothing will ever change again. No sunrise, no laughter, no warmth, just stillness. At first, perhaps you would find serenity in it, the end of struggle, the end of noise. But then the questions would creep in. Without change, without motion, without others, what does it mean to exist? The loneliness wouldn't just be about the absence of company, it would be the absence of meaning itself. And yet, there is an odd kind of empowerment in facing that truth, because when you realize that the universe itself might one day know loneliness, you see that your own longing for connection isn't weakness. It is written into the fabric of reality. The stars themselves needed companions. Galaxies swirled in clusters, not in isolation. Life sought life over and over again, because existence without relationship has always been incomplete. Even in its grandest scale, the cosmos reflects what you feel in your quietest nights. So perhaps cosmic loneliness is not something to fear, but something to understand. Maybe it invites us to lean into connection while we can, to pick up the phone when we're tempted to withdraw, to look at someone we love and let the words we've been holding back finally fall. If eternity without warmth is the natural destiny of matter and energy, then the warmth we share now is nothing short of miraculous. It is rebellion against the silence, a spark against the ice. And here is where the perspective shifts. Yes, the frozen cosmos is a picture of stillness and solitude. But you and I, we are here, now, in the brief window before that final silence. The loneliness of the far future is not ours yet. Instead, it is a mirror, showing us what truly matters in the present. The fact that the stars still burn, that our world still spins, that your heart still beats, means the silence has not claimed us. You are not alone. Not yet, not ever, as long as you choose to connect, to feel, to open. So when you think of the frozen universe, don't let it be only a story of absence. Let it be a story of contrast, reminding you how rare and precious the presence is. Every laugh shared, every hand held, every moment of warmth is the universe resisting its eventual fate. And maybe, just maybe, that's the secret. Loneliness on the cosmic scale shows us the urgency of love on the human scale. The universe may drift toward silence, but you don't have to. You can choose to speak, to reach, to give, to love. In the end, that choice is what separates cold emptiness from living warmth. And in the silence of eternity, the memory of those choices may be the only echoes that truly endure. So here we are, at the edge of everything. The stars have gone silent, galaxies have turned to glass, black holes have whispered their last breath, and the universe has slowed into an endless hush. It feels like the closing of a book, the moment when the final sentence fades, and you almost don't want to turn the page because you know there's nothing left to read. But is that really the end? Or is it only the end of a chapter, waiting for a story we cannot yet imagine? The human heart resists endings. Think about how you linger at the end of a beautiful song, not ready to let go of its last note. Or how you hesitate when saying goodbye, your voice soft, your body holding on for just a little longer. Endings unsettle us because they hold mystery. We know what came before, but what lies after, whether in our lives or in the universe itself, remains veiled. And in that veil, we often find not despair but possibility. Scientists speak of a heat death, where all energy evens out and nothing more can happen. A universe without change, without spark. But even among physicists, there are whispers of other paths. Could quantum fluctuations spark new beginnings in the stillness? Could hidden dimensions, ones we barely grasp, cradle the seeds of another universe? Some imagine a cosmic rebirth, like a phoenix rising from its ashes, the frozen silence giving way to the fire of a new creation. The thought may be speculative, but doesn't it stir something inside youth, a refusal to believe that silence is all there is? And maybe that longing for continuation is more than wishful thinking. Maybe it's part of what makes us human. We are storytellers by nature, and stories rarely end in silence. Even in the bleakest tragedies, we search for a glimmer of what comes next. Because, deep down, we believe that endings are beginnings, wearing different clothes. Perhaps the frozen cosmos is simply the universe's way of pausing, of taking a breath before the next great act. Think about your own life. Haven't there been times when something felt like the end, the closing of a door, the loss of someone dear, the collapse of a dream? And yet, after the ache, after the silence, something new took root. A new direction, a new strength, a new relationship you hadn't expected. In the moment, it felt final. Later, it revealed itself as a transformation. The universe may not be so different. What looks like stillness could be the soil for a story not yet told. But here's the most comforting part. Even if the cosmic story does end in silence, the meaning of everything that came before doesn't disappear. The stars that burned, the galaxies that spun, the lives that were lived, they mattered. They mattered because they happened. Their beauty, their fleetingness, their impermanence gave them weight. Just as your laughter today matters, even if it won't echo forever. Just as your love matters, even if the universe never writes it in the stars. There's power in embracing both sides, the possibility of a new beginning and the grace of accepting an ending. To know that everything passes is to know how sacred the present truly is. The frozen cosmos, with all its silence and stillness, is not a punishment, but a teacher. It whispers, "Nothing lasts, so cherish everything." And perhaps that is the new beginning the universe offers us, not one written in galaxies, but one written in our own hearts. To live with presence, to love with urgency, to see in the small, fleeting moments of your life the vast reflection of a cosmos that once blazed and sang and shimmered with light. When you sit quietly tonight, listening to your breath, know that you are sharing in the same rhythm the stars once carried. You are part of the story, and no silence can erase that. So, as we close this journey through a frozen cosmos, let's leave with a thought both gentle and daring. Endings may not be ends at all. They may be invitations. Invitations to wonder, to hope, to imagine beyond what we can measure. The universe may one day fall silent, but silence itself might be the canvas for something beyond our comprehension. Until then, we are here, warm, alive, breathing, dreaming, and that is enough. More than enough. Because in a universe destined for stillness, your voice, your heartbeat, they are proof that the cosmos is not yet frozen, not yet finished, not yet done singing. And so we close not with silence, but with a whisper of possibility. That every ending carries within it the seed of a new beginning. And maybe, just maybe, the universe is not falling asleep forever. Maybe it is only dreaming, waiting to wake again. When the last light fades, what remains? That question lingers like a shadow on the edge of thought, unsettling yet magnetic, pulling us closer to truths we rarely dare to face. For billions of years, stars have burned, galaxies have collided, and life has whispered its fragile story into the cosmos. But no fire burns forever. No symphony plays without an end. The universe itself, vast and mighty, carries within it the seeds of silence. And if the story of creation has a final act, many cosmologists believe it will unfold not in fire, but in cold. The theory of heat death, sometimes called the Big Freeze, paints a picture of the ultimate stillness. Energy spread thinner and thinner until there is no spark left to ignite a star. Motion slowing to a crawl. Galaxies drifting apart until they vanish beyond each other's reach. Imagine a night sky not filled with countless stars, but with nothing at all. Blackness so complete it feels endless. Time would still march on, but with nothing left to measure. What would time even mean? This is not destruction in a blaze of chaos, it's the slow erasure of possibility. And yet, there is a strange beauty in this vision. The silence of a frozen universe is not violent, but serene. The cosmos, after all, its storms would finally rest. The great engines of creation and destruction would quiet themselves, leaving behind a calm unlike anything we can comprehend. But as comforting as that sounds, it also leaves us with a piercing question. If everything ends in silence, what was the point of all the noise that came before? This is where science and philosophy meet hand in hand. Cosmologists like Lord Kelvin first spoke of heat death in the 19th century, and modern physicists have refined the idea through our understanding of entropy. The second law of thermodynamics and invisible rule that governs how energy disperses seems to guide the universe toward this end. Yet, even as scientists chart equations predicting a frozen horizon, thinkers and dreamers resist. Could the universe really just stop? Is that all? Or might there be something hidden in the quiet, a chapter beyond the silence we cannot yet read? Some theories offer different endings. The Big Crunch, where expansion halts and reverses, pulling everything back into a fiery collapse. The Big Rip, a more violent fate, where dark energy tears galaxies, stars, even atoms apart. Each scenario reflects both our scientific uncertainty and our human need for story. We can't help but ask, what happens after the last page? Do we accept finality, or do we imagine renewal? The answer may say more about us than it does about the universe itself. Let's step closer to the mystery. If heat death truly comes, it will not arrive tomorrow, or even in a million lifetimes. The timescales are so vast they almost mock our ability to comprehend them. Trillions of years. A horizon so distant it makes human history feel like a spark in the dark. And yet, doesn't that perspective stir something deep within you? A reminder of how fleeting our lives are, and how precious each moment becomes when measured against eternity. The fate of everything may be silence, but your existence right now is thunder, brief and radiant. And here lies the paradox. In imagining the coldest possible end, we awaken the fire inside us. If the universe drifts toward stillness, then our laughter, our love, our small human struggles take on greater meaning. They are temporary victories against the void. They are proof that, at least for a while, the cosmos was not silent. You and I are part of the noise that resists nothingness, even if only for a breath of time. Doesn't that make every heartbeat a kind of rebellion? Of course, science does not settle so easily. Even within the shadow of heat death, new questions flicker. Could quantum fluctuations, the tiny, restless ripples of reality, spark something new in the emptiness? Could universes bud from the husk of an old one, like flowers blooming from ashes? Some physicists entertain the idea of a multiverse, where our cosmos is just one bubble among countless others, each with its own birth and end. And if so, could heat death be less of a finale and more of a doorway, a threshold we cannot yet see through? It's here that curiosity and hope intertwine. Maybe the universe will one day fall quiet. Maybe it will rise again in ways our current science cannot predict. Either way, what we hold on to is the story. The stars lived, and we lived with them. We looked up, we wondered, we built meaning in the face of impermanence. And perhaps that's the true answer to what remains. Not galaxies or black holes, but the imprint of having been here, of having loved in the brief window when the universe was alive with fire. So, as we imagine the frozen horizon, let's not see only despair. Let's see contrast the light of now against the darkness of eternity. Let's see empowerment, that even if the cosmos fades, we are alive in this rare, burning moment. And let's see identity, that we are not passive observers of the universe's fate, but expressions of it, sparks that prove it once sang. The fate of everything may be silence, but within that silence, the echo of our presence will always matter. And maybe, just maybe, the silence itself is not the end. Perhaps it is the beginning of something so vast, so different, we cannot name it yet. Just as winter can look like death, but secretly nurtures the seeds of spring, the cosmic freeze may cradle possibilities we have not begun to imagine. In that sense, heat death is not only a scientific theory. It is a mirror, showing us both the fragility and the wonder of existence. When the last light fades, what remains is the courage to wonder, the will to love, and the quiet hope that the story is not finished. And so, traveler, after wandering together through frozen stars, silent galaxies, and the whispered fate of everything, we arrive at the edge of our dream. The journey has been one of stillness, but also of awakening. For in tracing the idea of a cosmos caught in ice, we have not simply looked outward, we have looked inward. The universe may stretch into unimaginable distances, but it also folds quietly into the space of your own heart. Do you feel it now? That curious mix of awe and calm, as if the stars themselves were leaning close to listen. The story we have traveled tonight was not about destruction, not truly. It was about the beauty of stillness, about the resilience of mystery, and about the power of imagination to carry us into places no rocket could ever reach. We spoke of frozen galaxies, locked in glittering spirals like ancient cities of glass. We wondered about black holes, fading slowly, their faint glow flickering like lanterns in the night. We asked whether dark matter and dark energy, the invisible threads of reality, would endure even when all else stood still. And we felt the loneliness of such a silence, the kind that can mirror our own solitude on a winter's night, yet also reveal its quiet peace. It is easy to think of cosmic endings as tragedies, but endings are also mirrors, reflecting back what mattered most in the time before. A frozen universe does not diminish the miracle of what came before it. If anything, it amplifies it. Just as snow falling on a city makes the lights glow warmer, so does the thought of a frozen cosmos make our present moments blaze brighter. Isn't that what you feel deep down, that your laughter, your breath, your fleeting dreams are made more luminous by the knowledge that they do not last forever? And maybe that's the true gift of imagining the cosmic freeze. Not fear, not despair, but perspective. The vast, cold silence reminds us that the warmth of being here, alive, is not something to overlook. Every friendship you hold, every memory you create, every quiet second spent watching the sky, all of it matters more than you think. Because against eternity's silence, even the softest human voice is thunder. Against the frozen horizon, your small light burns like a star. So perhaps the dream of a frozen universe is not just about physics. Perhaps it is also a story about identity. Who are you when faced with the thought of everything ending? Are you someone who shrinks away, or someone who chooses to shine all the brighter in the darkness? The cosmos may one day grow silent, but you are alive in the chapter where it still sings. You get to decide what kind of music you add to that symphony. Will it be a whisper, or will it be a note that echoes? As we close this journey, let me ask you one last question. When you imagine yourself standing in the middle of a frozen galaxy, surrounded by diamond dust and rivers of light, caught forever in stillness, what do you feel? Is it fear or is it serenity? The answer does not lie in science books or equations. It lies in you, in your willingness to find meaning, not just in fire and motion, but also in quiet and rest. And so, traveler, our path returns to where it began, with a dream, the cosmos frozen, yet glimmering like a snow globe in the hands of time. A dream that, though distant, speaks to the deepest truths of being human, that even in silence, beauty remains, that even in stillness, there is wonder, that even when everything fades, the story of having lived your story endures in the only place that matters, the memory of existence itself. If this journey has stirred something within you, if you felt awe ripple through your chest, or calm settle gently over your thoughts, then perhaps you'll want to continue walking these cosmic paths with me. There are countless mysteries still waiting, countless horizons still glowing in the dark. And while the universe may one day fall silent, our curiosity doesn't have to. You can carry it forward with us into the next wonder, the next dream, the next quiet, starlit question. So take this as an invitation, offered gently. If you'd like to keep traveling through imagination and discovery together, you know how to stay connected. Subscribe, not as a command, but as a kind of shared promise that whenever you wish to wander again, there will be a place waiting for you, lit softly by starlight and guided by curiosity. For now, let us rest in the dream we've built tonight, the dream of a frozen cosmos, serene and still, holding within it the echoes of all that has ever been. Close your eyes, if you like, and picture it. Galaxies glittering like frost, black holes fading like embers, silence stretching so far it feels like eternity. Let that silence cradle you, not as emptiness, but as peace. Let it remind you that you are part of something vast, something timeless, something that matters simply because it exists. And when you open your eyes, again whether in the morning light or in the middle of the night, you may carry with you a fragment of that frozen dream, a reminder that endings do not erase meaning, that silence is not the absence of story, but a space for reflection, and that, in the brief and beautiful moment we call life, we are given the chance to burn brightly, to love deeply, and to wonder endlessly. So sleep well, traveler, and may your dreams be filled with galaxies of ice and horizons of light. For the universe may one day freeze, but tonight it is alive in you.